My Stirling single, part 57, rubbing down the etch primer on the cab, spraying the interior with satin black paint and painting the front bogey splashes. I painted this cab with etch primer about 24 hours ago, and here it is sat on the bench. Don't forget though that normal etch primer is designed for steel and doesn't etch brass. This is a quick clip from yesterday showing me painting the cab, using my usual brand of etch primer. In this case, even though this primer is not etching, it's sticking to the brass very well. Once again, here are the details on the can, but unfortunately Autopaint Northern do not post paint. I have to go and collect it. And here we are once again, time travelling. 24 hours later, the cab is on the bench. I'm going to use some 600 grade wet to dry sandpaper to rub down the primer, and as always I'm using it wet. Here's some water in a small tub, and it's really important to use water when doing this, because otherwise the sandpaper soon clogs up. Just before I painted this cab, I don't think that I actually shook the aerosol can to mix up the paint, and so for some reason the primer on the front left hand side of the cab was a bit rough to the touch. The wet to dry sandpaper soon makes it very smooth indeed. A word of caution though, don't rub too hard. You will notice occasionally when I touch the edge it goes through to the brass, and there's not much I can do about this, to be honest, but if you rub too hard on the flat parts, the wet to dry sandpaper, even though it's only 600 grit, which is quite fine, will still rub through the primer and reveal the brass. I didn't spray quite enough etch primer in some of the places, but there is enough. You need a surprisingly small amount of etch primer for the next coat to stick to it. After using wet to dry sandpaper, I finished off the job by using Scotch-Brite. This really gets into the corners. It isn't quite as abrasive as sandpaper, but it does the job. And just like the sandpaper, if you rub too hard with Scotch-Brite, you will also rub through the primer. Use a firm but delicate touch, and you should get good results. The paintwork on this engine for me is a problem. It's not just a quick spray job. Just for a change, I'm going to spray the inside of the cab using this stuff. It's good paint, high coat, satin black. Just for the record, I did have a look at the inside of a cab on a full-size Stirling single engine, and believe me, the paintwork is very rough indeed. I think over the years it's been wire brushed so many times and there's paint left on and overpainted, but on a smaller version there has to be somewhat of a compromise. I could make the paintwork on the boiler backhead look really rough, but if I did paint the boiler backhead like the original, I'm sure some viewers would comment and tell me how to do it. I'm trying not to get any runs or sags with this black paint, and for that reason I keep the cab moving. It's sat on a plastic box which I rotate frequently. I will of course need to paint the outside of the cab using Great Northern Railway Loco Green. And when I spray the outside, there's bound to be some gets on the black paint, so the inside of the cab will need a second coat, and I will mask off the green. This can's been on the shelf for quite a while, so I'm giving it a good pre-shake. I'm not going to paint it today. Before I paint the cab, I will thoroughly shake this for quite a long time to stir up the contents inside. I'm going to move on and paint the splashes, and as you can see, one is already painted, and originally they were both painted, but I wasn't happy with the finish. When I first painted these splashes, I used some special paint that I bought, and it was masking paint. You painted it on, and it set like rubber, and then once you painted over the top of it, the idea was to peel it off, but mine didn't peel off very well and left a bit of a mess all over the place. I'm definitely experimenting with the paint on this engine. I've had a close-up look at the full size, or at least photographs of the full size, and the paint on that is not perfect. The trouble is, you cannot scale nature. That was something that LBSC used to say a lot. His articles are legendary, and they appeared in the Model Engineer magazine many years ago. I'm going to use self-etch primer once again, but this time I'm going to use it in an entirely different way. After cleaning the parts thoroughly, I sprayed some self-etch primer into the aerosol can cap, then applied it to the parts using a cloth, not a paintbrush, and I got a very even covering. On the first attempt I did use a paintbrush, but I got a much better finish by using a cloth dipped in the etch primer. I am, however, going to brush paint the rest of these parts using first of all Great Northern Railway Loco green paint, which I stirred up in the tin using the paintbrush, which is not really a good idea, but I didn't have a suitable stick at hand. Once I'd thoroughly stirred this paint and was happy with the consistency, I started to apply it. And the first layer looked so horrible I wiped it off with a cloth. There seemed to be quite a lot of particles in the paint, but I think the particles were on the component I was painting. At this point, I would really like to ask YouTube viewers, particularly expert YouTube viewers, not to write in and tell me how to do this. I like to find out on my own, thank you very much. Painting is something that I'm not very good at, and I do need the practice. The results that I get range from very good to not good at all, and are quite inconsistent. I worked my way around the splashes, first of all using the Great Northern Railway Loco green, and then I painted the brown part, using Great Northern Railway Frames Chocolate, which is a delightful colour. The paint doesn't look too good at the moment, but then again it is under a very bright video light. I'll have a closer look at it in normal lighting when the paint's dried. Here is a usual painting shot of the paint actually drying. I can't do anything else anywhere near the locomotive for the time being, so I'll just say stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.